You already read the title, and you already know what's going to be happening in this video because that's why you clicked on it. Or tapped on it. I don't know what you used to get on YouTube. Today, I will be looking at every single Thomas and Friends movie because why not? Jeez, this video will take forever. Thomas has been in a lot of movies, let me tell you. Everybody loves these movies because 1, they have memorable stories for the Thomas franchise, and 2, they introduce brand new characters and make a huge impact with the fandom. So I thought it would be a cool idea to look at each one of them, then rank them on a tier list once finished. Also, when I say every Thomas movie, I mean every Thomas movie. So I'm gonna have to look at the All Engines Go movies as well. I'm going to regret making that decision. Also, all of these are in my opinion, so go watch these movies and make your own. Please do not bully me in the comment section. Spoilers ahead, by the way. Without wasting any more of your time, because this video is going to be long enough, let's start reviewing. Thomas and the Magic Mirror was the first Thomas movie ever, obviously. Now, apart from other films I'm going to talk about later, this one was a bit different than all the others, because instead of being animated, it was live action and they were still using models. The thing that also made this movie different was that it came out in theaters instead of on video. Now, most would dislike this movie after its release. Like, let's go on Rotten Tomatoes and, oh dang, okay, that already says a lot. But I still found this movie a bit enjoyable, and a few other people as well. So the plot of the movie is while Sir Topham Hatt is on vacation, he gets Mr. Conductor to take care of the island and all the engines on it, while also having to take care of Shining Time in the real world at the same time. But then, Sodor is threatened by a new Diesel with a claw called Diesel 10, who also plans to destroy the magical engine, Lady, who he did before. So it's up to Thomas and his friends to keep the island safe, as well as Lady from this new Diesel. There's also this other character called Lily, who's trying to find her grandfather, Burnett Stone, who's connected to the magic engine. We also get Mr. Conductor trying to find help from his cousin Junior, as he keeps calling him with flower phones? I don't know how this works. Soon, they're able to bring Lady back to life near the end of the movie, as she also gets her face back. Thomas also flirts with her for some reason. But just when they think it's over, the two then get chased by Diesel 10. Luckily, they outrun him, and he falls to his death. Just kidding, he falls into my book. They also get the gold dust back, so now Mr. Conductor can travel between Sodor and the human world without any trouble, and Sir won't fire him from his job. And yeah, that's the end of the movie. Now, apart from the weird backlash this movie got after it came out, fans actually still love this movie. It was also made in the way that Britt Allcroft saw Thomas in the first place, as a toy world. Which is also kind of why most didn't like it, because it didn't really stick to Audrey's vision. Now, nothing against her, obviously. In fact, nothing against her at all. But it was still a pretty good movie. Thomas also got his catchphrase, "Little engines can do big things." I also hear that Edward and George were also going to appear in the movie, but they were scrapped. And there was supposed to be another villain called P.T. Boomer, but they said he was too scary for kids. I can still respect this film for its efforts, and it still is pretty special. Therefore, it is S tier. Calling All Engines was a good film, I guess. This was sort of during the hit era time, but hey, at least there were still models. Bear with with me here. So it's summertime on the island of Sodor, and all of the engines are working really hard, as usual. Especially Thomas, because why not? But one day Ari and Furt make fun of Thomas, including Diesel. So Thomas decides to pull a prank on them and give them a load of bananas. But Thomas didn't realize that because of that prank, the sheds couldn't be rebuilt. And everybody's mad at the Diesels because they're the ones who brought the load in the first place. Thomas is also too afraid to go to the scrapyard because Diesel 10 works there. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they brought back Diesel 10 in this movie. As well as Lady, but she was just a dream Thomas had. So yeah, it's at least nice to know that Hit decided to act like this movie exists after its colossal failure. Still love this movie, but back to the point. But after that prank, everyone is so mad at each other, so they start beefing and bashing each other into situations. And after all of these accidents caused on purpose, Thomas has had enough and just decides to say, and they all decide, instead of being enemies, that it's time to be friends and help rebuild the airport. But Diesel 10 still isn't helping, so Thomas decides to have the Beans to go up to him and ask for help. And he agrees. They're able to rebuild the airport, and the sheds have been rebuilt too. Also a little bit weird to see Diesel 10 and Thomas working together because it kind of puts a dent in the Thomas timeline, but I'll get back to that later. And yeah, that's the movie. Now let me just say, this movie was not great, it was not bad, it was just good. It had a good story behind it, and it was still kind of during the golden age of Thomas. So I'll give this film a B tier, because let me say how I feel about tiers. S is the best, A is great, B is good, C is sorta good, D is just mid, E is forgettable, and F is bad, terrible, we don't talk about this. And again, I'm not saying this movie's bad or great, I'm just saying it's good. It's sort of like a very long season 6 to 7 episode. So yeah, B tier. Again. The Great Discovery is going to be S tier, there is no doubt about that. It still holds up with many classic scenes, like the bridge scene, and with Thomas and James racing at the start. So once again, the film starts out just like a few seconds ago, with Thomas and James racing to Mr. Percival. Then Thomas wins the race and makes it to Mr. Percival first. Then Mr. Percival assigns Thomas to some cars he needs to take across the suspension bridge. Which he does, but then the bridge breaks. Then as Thomas goes even further, he then discovers an old town known as Great Waterton. Yeah, he discovered Great Waterton. Get it? He discovered it. Like the title of the movie, The Great Discovery. Shut up! So Thomas decides to tell Sir that he discovered Great Waterton, and it's a very rare town that engines used to live at. And since Thomas found it, Sir decides to put Thomas in charge of all the work, and to reopen it for Sodor Day. But while he does, a brand new tank engine comes to the island whose name is Stanley, who comes to the island to do most of Thomas's work, and all of the engines are fascinated by him. Which makes Thomas jealous, because everyone's starting to pay more attention to Stanley than him after he found Great Waterton. And to make things worse, he is now sleeping in Thomas's shed with the rest of the engines. But then he accidentally crashes off the line and derails. And he is in no condition to work, so Thomas decides to make Stanley in charge of the work since he'll be repaired. Man, this is just rough. Like, first no one pays attention to him, then he gets his birth taken away from him, and now his job being in charge over the work of a town he found is getting taken away from him. Like, gosh, this is painful. And since Thomas is so angry, he gets an idea to get back at Stanley by shunting a long line of cars for him to take. As Stanley tries his hardest, the cars are just too heavy for him. Then they snap. Then they crash into a building which gets knocked down, and all of the hard work on Great Waterton was wasted. Then everyone gets mad at Thomas because he shunted too many cars for Stanley to get back at him, and now he is disliked even more. So Thomas accidentally gets lost into a mine looking for a car, and then he crashes onto a raft into an ocean. And he is drifting throughout the cave, helpless, with no one to save him. So everyone decides to go looking for Thomas because he's been lost. Then, out of nowhere, Thomas crashes out of the caves and over a waterfall, as he lands in a field all moggy and wet and dirty. But thankfully, Stanley hears Thomas's whistle and comes to the rescue. Soon the two reconcile over the entire movie. Then Stanley helps Thomas back onto the tracks, and Great Waterton is able to be rebuilt just in time for Sodor Day. This movie deserves an S tier to me. Mostly because it looks so clean and polished. I cannot say that enough. Stanley is also introduced. And there's a rap at the end. Yes, I kid you not. There is a Thomas the Tank Engine rap. This rap is not only catchy, but it's what most Thomas YouTubers use for the intros of their fan series. Me included. So yeah, S tier. Hero of the Rails kind of felt decent. It's also the first CGI Thomas movie since, you know, it was during the Sharon Miller era. Yeah, not a fun time for Thomas. So it's summertime on the island of Sodor, once again. That is until a certain engine is speeding around the island annoying everyone. And we find out this engine speeding around is Spencer. He's also teasing everyone around the island and thinking that he's better than everyone else, and his presence makes him the best. However, one day he takes it too far and challenges Thomas to a race across the entire island with who's the strongest. As Thomas and him are racing, Thomas goes too fast and gets pushed by the trucks. He then gets lost in a forest and meets another engine known as Hero, who is an old, rusty, washed-up engine, who used to be one of Sir Topham Hatt's first engines to ever arrive on Sodor, and was known as Master of the Railway. So Thomas decides to help the poor engine and get him back on his wheels and working again, which he needs to keep secret from Spencer. Thomas also tells the other engines so they understand why he keeps running off so often. And soon, Hero is almost complete as he almost has the new parts that he needs. But soon, Spencer catches on and realizes Thomas is trying to save an engine who should have been scrapped. But then he gets in trouble because he wasn't working on the Duke and Duchess' new summer house. Instead, he was focusing all of his time on Thomas and Hero. So all of that time being suspicious of another engine was for nothing, huh, Spencer?
This is very suspicious.
Did this dude just say suspicious?
Amogus. Suluma. Sulugu.
But Spencer is still sus of Thomas, so he races him until he falls into a bridge of mud. He's then taken out, and Hero is now repaired and not getting scrapped. The three then apologize for this whole fiasco. Then Hero leaves to start fresh. This film sort of felt good, I guess. It did feel a bit boring at some parts. It's also a bit mid with its effects, but I can still enjoy it as well as many other people. All I really need to say is if you want to watch this movie, then go for it, or watch the Mara the Hedgehog remake. Oh, wait.
Suluma.
C tier. Misty Island Rescue felt very weird and bad to me. It just sort of falls flat, also because it's during the nitrogen thing. I actually remember watching this trailer when I was 5 at either my cousin or a friend's house. So yeah, congrats 5-year-old me, you played yourself. So at the start of the movie, we learned that they're going to be rebuilding a brand new search and rescue center on Sodor. Captain will be getting his own boathouse, Harold will be getting his own helipad, and Rocky will be getting his own shed, I think.
Rocky, your shed will be over there.
God, his voice is so deep. As everyone starts working, Thomas and Percy come to the docks to find some new wood on a boat known as Joby Wood. Wait, is that Hero? I thought he went back to Japan in the last movie. At least it wasn't as impactful as season 24. Then, out of nowhere, as Diesel wants to take Joby Wood, Thomas just makes fun of him being racist as he can't take it because he's not a steam engine. Which makes Diesel angry. So he decides to take the Joby Wood himself. But it turns out that Thomas wasn't being racist because the Joby Wood was very rare and important and Diesel couldn't take it because he didn't know what he was doing. As Diesel keeps going fast, he then comes to a bridge as he almost falls over. Help! Thomas gets him back up, but now all of the Joby Wood fell in the sea. So now, Diesel being the idiot he is, lost all the Joby Wood. Thomas needs to go off to Misty Island to rescue all of it. So Thomas is just placed on a raft that's conveniently next to the boat. But then the chains snap. And now Thomas is lost on Misty Island. Where he runs into the... he runs into, the logging locals. Which are Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand.
That's right.
Shut up! Thomas, being the racist engine he is, decides that he's not going to take their help to get back home and decides to do things by himself. And soon Sir Topham Hatt is also informed that Thomas is lost on Misty Island. So when Thomas meets up back with the logging locals again, they teach him how their island works. And it's also revealed that they've been carrying around the Joby Wood. They go around rickety old bridges, and have a machine called Old Betsy, I think? I don't know. And Sir is still trying to find Thomas as he gets whiff of all engines on how Misty Island is located through mines. So out of nowhere, they just decide to follow Thomas for no reason. And they all get lost inside of this cave. Thomas then makes 3 puffs of steam to clear all the mist away from Misty Island so they can locate him. But then the dumbest thing in the entire movie happens. Sir Topham Hatt sends Gordon, Edward, and James on a ship to Misty Island to find Thomas. And Sir also decides to think that it's a good idea to send Percy and Whiff through the mines to Misty Island to find Thomas when he already has 3 other engines on a ship looking for him. 1 engine at a time, sir. Percy's able to find Thomas and the logging locals with Whiff. They rescue all of them. Then they all celebrate as the new search and rescue center is rebuilt and the movie ends. But then, up in the mountains, we see Diesel 10 as he's planning his revenge, teasing the next movie. Let me just say this movie is absolutely terrible. Listen, hear me out! Throughout the entire movie, Thomas keeps saying these dumb catchphrases over and over and over again, non-stop.
I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold. Make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold. I make good decisions, that's what I was told. I will not be fearful, I'll be brave and bold.
What the heck is this, Dr. Seuss? Ferdinand also won't shut up as he keeps saying "that's right" over and over again.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
This movie is just corny, cringe, and so bad and boring, I don't even know which tier to put it on. So to settle with this cringe movie, I'm gonna flip a coin on it. Heads for E or tails for D. And if it lands on the sides, I'll just not place it anywhere. Heads. E tier. Before I watched, I thought this was just gonna be another Misty Island, but I was greatly mistaken. Now, remember how I said not to forget Diesel 10's role in calling all engines, and how it puts a dent in the Thomas timeline? If you don't, let me fill you in. Also, a little bit weird to see Diesel 10 and Thomas working together, since it kind of puts a dent in the Thomas timeline, but I'll go back to that later. So yeah, there you go. Well, see, the thing about that is, in calling all engines, Diesel 10's nice to Thomas. And he was evil before in Magic Railroad. And if this movie didn't exist, it would just seem like he's nice. But no, since this movie exists, he's bad in this one. It just doesn't make sense. He's bad once, he's good once, then he's bad again. So that kind of puts a dent on continuity. But it still is a good movie, in my opinion. And it also has one of the best intro openings to a Thomas movie ever. In my opinion. So once again, it's summertime on Sodor, like calling all engines and hero of the rails. I'm not even gonna point that out if it happens again in another movie. And you wanna know why it's always summertime during these movies of the Miller era? Lazy writing. But a nice summer day then turns into a dark, smoky day as a fire breaks out at the steamworks. Soon, a new engine called Belle comes and puts it out with her water hose. But then it's here as Thomas starts hanging out with her more and doing more jobs with her, which makes Percy a bit upset. And since Percy's upset, Diesel's trying to convince him that he might not be his friend anymore, and there are some reasons why he should come to the Diesel Works. So he does, and he meets Diesel 10, Den, Dart, and Arian Burt. And they soon start to act like Percy's real friends, since Thomas isn't really spending much time with him, or the Steam Team themselves. To make things worse, a new firefighter engine called Flynn comes to the island of Sodor, and soon, Thomas starts showing him around the island as well. And now Flynn is sleeping in Percy's berth. My gosh, all of these movies are so painful. Like, it's the Great Discovery all over again. So Percy takes Kevin to the Diesel Works because they need a crane to help them around the trash place. And now Percy has real friends rather than the Steam Team just forgetting about him. But then Percy makes a mistake and finds out their intentions, that the Diesels only wanted the Steamworks and they were using Percy to get to it. And they completely just start trashing the place. So Percy saves Kevin and Thomas from the Diesel Works. Flynn and Belle put the fire out with their water hoses. Then the whole Steam Team comes together to stop the Diesels from terrorizing the Steamworks. How is Diesel 10 not even dizzy? They all arrive at the Steamworks, and Sir Topham Hatt gives a stern word to Diesel 10, and it's revealed that he's actually scared of the Fat Controller. But Percy tells Sir Topham Hatt the reason, that their Diesel Works isn't really holding up well, and that's why they stole the Steamworks, because they wanted a place to live. So Sir Topham Hatt decides to have all the engines and diesels help work on the Diesel Works so they have a new home. And yeah, that's it. Also, I guess I did enjoy this film. I like how they make Percy the main character this time instead of Thomas. Also, the ending theme slaps, which is conveniently playing in the background. So, C tier. to say before Blue Mountain Mystery is this is the last movie during the Nitrogen era, so I don't have to suffer during this boring section and move over to the Andrew Brenner era. You guys don't have to either. One day at the Blue Mountain Quarry, all of the narrow gauge engines are having a nice day and everything's going smoothly with work. That is until Rheneas becomes a runaway, the bridge breaks, and he almost crashes but doesn't. But Paxton gets damaged. Then, back on Thomas's branch line, he is taking Annie and Clarabelle. But then Sir Topham Hatt arrives with a new character called Winston. He lets Thomas know about Paxton's injuries and assigns him to his jobs at the Blue Mountain Quarry. So the next day when he arrives there, he soon starts seeing a little green engine going throughout mine tunnels. So the narrow gauge engines tell Thomas that that is Luke. He's a small green engine who's hiding, and he did something terrible a long time ago. And no one out of the Blue Mountain Quarry should know about this. So Thomas decides to keep it a secret. Luke then decides to come out of the shadows and talk to Thomas about his origins. He tells him a long time ago that he was leaving a ship to Sodor, but he accidentally knocked a yellow engine off the ship into the sea. Now Luke thinks that the engine might be scrapped and he'll be sent away for his actions. But while telling Thomas, Paxton got better and he overheard everything along with Diesel. So Thomas travels to the steamworks to tell Victor about the yellow engine. But then we find out that Victor was the yellow engine. So Thomas decides to go off to tell Luke that the yellow engine didn't die and he's been on Sodor this entire time. But then as Thomas tells everyone, everyone gets mad at him for exposing Luke's existence. So they all chuff away and leave Thomas alone with Diesel, the absolute piece of a crap jerk he is. But then as Thomas tries to get up to Luke, he starts slipping, so Luke helps him back onto the tracks. Thomas and Victor then confirm everything, and Luke finally gets to meet Victor after all these years. And yeah, the movie ends. This wasn't a boring, it was just kind of corny. They kind of just keep bringing up the same stuff over and over again. And we also got to find out a little bit of lore in this movie. But hey, at least Andrew Brenner stepped in afterwards. So I'll give this film a C tier. This is such an amazing film, and other ones down the line. This had such an impact on the franchise and much more. So the movie starts with Thomas and Percy bumping cars and goofing around at the docks. But one car has a box with a knighting armor in it. Knighting armor? But one of the boxes had a knight armor in it. We also find out some lore about Sodor more in this movie. Like it used to be ruled by kings, there was castles, and the castles eventually turned into ruins as we reach present day. We also learn that the Earl of Sodor is coming back. So as the news spreads, everybody gets ready for the Earl's arrival, including a party at Knapford Station. OG Thomasine. Soon as the Earl arrives, he immediately leaves for some reason. So Thomas goes off to Ulfstead Castle, and we also meet Millie. Fun fact, she has the same whistle as Lady. Anyway, after some unnecessary scenes, Henry breaks down, so Percy needs to take his train. But then we see James there and Thomas there. So the Fat Controller decides to have all three of them take it, cause why not? And here comes the iconic scene. Then the entire crew meets Stephen, who is a part of the Earl's plan to bring back Ulfsted Castle. So after getting repaired, Thomas decides to do something stupid and tell Stephen he has a job even though the Earl told him to keep it a secret. So throughout the day, Stephen is looking for a job around the entire island. Also, Connor and Caitlin arrive. They didn't really do much in this movie. And after finding out he never had a job, Stephen realizes that Thomas and Percy lied to him, and accidentally gets lost inside of a mine. Thomas then finds his funnel, and gets Jack to clear the rubble. Thomas frees him. Then they almost fall, but Thomas gets him back on top of the bridge. And now the celebration for the reopening of Ulfsted Castle comes. Then Gordon, Spencer, and Connor and Caitlin race around the entire island, and that's the whole movie. One thing that's interesting about this movie is it reveals the whole backstory of Sodor. Also, the ending theme is another banger. The animation has also gotten an improvement since, well, Andrew Brenner stepped in. So, S tier.
What's that just around the corner? Something.
This is not a great film nor a good film. It's a spooky film. Because, well, it was meant for Halloween. This film also has a little bit of nostalgia for me, so that's one thing. So one day Thomas is sent to the China clay pits.
Look out.
But while he's there, Bill and Ben play a trick on him. And because of this prank, Timothy... No, not that Timothy. That Timothy needs to put a stop to their silliness. But then a storm starts. And during the storm, Thomas discovers a footprint on a rock. The next morning, Bill and Ben are congratulated after saving Thomas from the storm and a rock slide. So the next day, Thomas tries to find the footprint, but he gets blocked by Marion, who's digging things up. Soon, a brand new engine comes to the island who everyone thinks is a monster, but it's just a regular engine, and it's called Gator. Also, throughout the movie, Percy just keeps getting scared by random things.
What's that? I hope it's not a monster! Run away! Run away! Run away!
Something big. It wasn't a haystack or a clothesline. It could only be one thing.
There's no such thing as monsters! There's no such thing as monsters! Ah! The monster! Oh no! Oh, Percy! Help! What's that?
Percy, stop! You've left your cars behind.
Oh!
Then one night, James also gets scared by Gator, and he crashes off the rails. And soon, everyone starts making fun of him and laughing at him. So he decides to put a scrap monster on the line to scare Percy. Then he runs back to the sheds and no one believes him. And since everyone is being an annoying friend to Percy like they always are, Percy decides to spend more time with Gator since he's his new best friend. And after Gator is supposed to leave on his ship, he convinces Percy not to leave because running away from his problems doesn't solve them. So he goes back to the China clay pits to prove that he did see a monster. Thomas also convinces James to come after he scared him with the scrap monster. So they both go to the China clay pits, only for James to find another rock with another symbol on it. Then a rock slide begins to happen, and Percy saves James as they both run from it. Percy almost gets hit by a rock, but then Marianne saves him, and we find out the symbols on the rock weren't actually symbols from a monster, but it was a fossil from a dinosaur many years ago. Thomas, Percy, and James reconcile about the entire movie, happens a lot now, and the fossil they all saw at the China clay pits gets remade for the museum. Thomas, Percy, and James also decide to pay Gator one last visit before he goes. And that's the movie. Now, one thing I do like about this movie is how they make Percy the main character again, like in Day of the Diesel. This movie also kind of hits me with a bit of nostalgia because I watched it when I was a bit younger. And oh my gosh, the ending, probably one of the most emotional endings ever to happen in a Thomas movie.
Bye, Gator.
I was amazed by what you did at the clay pits.
I rushed to the rescue. I know.
Percy was sad to say goodbye to his new friend, but he was happy that he still had his old friends beside him.
A tier. The Adventure Begins is probably the best Thomas movie ever made. Unless Mark Forster's movie is better. Maybe. I don't know. Now, this movie is a bit unlike any other. In fact, it's nothing like any other. The film retells Thomas's origins from the railway books. Sometimes it also might feel like this movie doesn't need to exist because the first episodes of the show already does that for us. But it was mostly to celebrate 70 years of the franchise, so that's probably why. So the film begins by showing us Edward as he's working in the yards as usual. But then big old Gordon comes along and teases him about it. Also, did I forget to mention that James used to be black? Oh no, not like that. I meant the color. No, I meant the actual color. You know, like the color of my wheels, like those glasses case, like this keyboard. Now, apart from Edward being teased, there's word around the island that a new engine is coming to help with the shunting. And after helping Gordon up the hill and not even saying thank you, the new engine arrives and you guessed it, it's Thomas. He always wasn't blue, he actually used to be green. Dude, I wasn't talking about you or the color, I was talking about... Oh well. Wait. Oh well. Hokey. Anyways, after that, we see Edward teaching Thomas how to work on the railway. Also how to shunt cars. Also that night when Henry comes into the shed, Edward tells Thomas about what happened to him a little while ago. That's right, the sad story of Henry. Then the next morning, Thomas is sent to the steamworks to be repainted. Wait, is Thomas pink? That can only mean... Anyway, Thomas actually gets painted blue this time, and he gets his number 1. Meeting Annie and Clarabelle a few hours later. And having to bring Gordon's coaches, that is until he's fed up about his prank yesterday. So, Gordon pulls Thomas while he's still coupled to his coaches. It's also time for Henry's train, but he's not there yet. So Thomas is assigned to take it, but he's too excited and runs off without being coupled. And thinks he's pulling coaches around the entire island, but he's not. After learning there's nothing there, he decides to go back and be patient this time. He also takes Edward's trucks, but they keep pushing him over and over again. And is punished and needs to go to the yards to work. But then James becomes a runaway with all his trucks. And to make things worse, his brakes are on fire. So Thomas chases after him to stop the accident, but it's too late. He then gets the breakdown train and helps James back onto the rails. After Thomas's bravery and unselfishness, he is rewarded with his own branch line. James also becomes red, and Thomas now gets Annie and Clarabelle and gets to go around Sodor. The credits also even look like the Railway series books, because they're actual pages. This movie overall was pretty incredible, if I say so myself. It retells Thomas's origins so that it can celebrate 70 years of the franchise. Mattel did an amazing job with this until they forgot, and well, this film is just King Garfield itself. I have nothing else to say. S tier.
We make a team together. 1, 2, 3. We go.
Once again, another Thomas movie banger. This one felt really good. It just felt like another day, another Thomas movie sort of thing, you know? So the movie starts with Thomas and Bertie racing and Thomas causing a lot of trouble. As him and Annie and Clarabelle reach Knapford, or a different station, I don't know, we soon find word that there's going to be a new branch line being built. Later, Marion is actually going to work on the new branch line. She then meets 3 little engines, which are Mike, Rex, and Bert. Later, an argument starts with Gordon, and Thomas takes his coaches across the line, but then causes an accident and is now in trouble. Then afterwards, as Sir Topham Hatt gets angry at Thomas, he gets a new tank engine called Ryan to run Thomas's branch line, while Thomas's punishment is to help build the new branch line. My gosh, it's Stanley all over again. Like, first he takes Annie and Clarabelle, then he takes his branch line, his birth, his attention. It's just not. As Thomas soon meets up with Rex, Mike, and Bert, he soon realizes that being a little engine isn't as bad as it seems, and how big engines don't need to overlook them. Thomas then goes to the construction site and takes some cars, but there was a reason why it was blocked off, because the ground was cracking, and soon he goes past the danger sign, and it breaks, and then he falls underground. He then slides all the way underground, off the tracks, and then Thomas discovers a giant pirate ship. As Thomas is taken out, he is still being scolded by the Fat Controller. We see Sailor John and Skiff, 2 new characters, spying on Thomas. Then Rocky soon discovers the ship, and everyone thinks that he found it, which makes Thomas understandably angry because he found it first, but no one was listening to him. It's soon brought around the island, possibly for the museum. Also, for some reason, Salty tells this story of a pirate captain, and that's why the ship is there. As Thomas is still upset about a lot of things, he then meets Sailor John and Skiff as they're trying to look for some buried treasure. So Thomas decides to help them as they dig it up all night. And they plan to do it again another night as Thomas pushes Skiff back to the sea as he can't really move on his own with no winds. Pushing his sails, of course. Also, some dynamite was lit on accident and Thomas tries to get rid of it as he also tells Ryan to get out of the way. Which makes the Fat Controller even more mad at Thomas. And Thomas decides that his only friends are Sailor John and Skiff as they go looking for the treasure again. But as they do, they can't find anything, and Sailor John gets suspicious of Thomas.
Amogus. Smogus.
But then Thomas soon realizes that Marion found a treasure box with a bunch of golden treasure in it, which the Topham Hatt plans to also give to the museum. And since he wants to know where the treasure is, Thomas tells him it's in Sir Topham Hatt's office, but he can't get to it. So Sailor John makes a plan to break in and steal the treasure back from Sir Topham Hatt's office. And with the help of some friends, Thomas chases after him. Thomas then gets put in the water, but then Skiff decides to do the right thing and go overboard, stopping Sailor John. The next morning, John's arrested, and Thomas is lifted out of the water. But this time, Sir isn't angry, and he's actually proud of Thomas for stopping that pirate. Soon, the new branch line opens, and and everyone gets to go on it as they celebrate this new thing. Also, Skiff has wheels now, and he decides to hang out with Thomas more. One thing that stands out to me is how the movie's credits are paintings, similar to the last movie that came before it with pages from the Railway series. Skiff was my favorite character, and it's not great or bad, it's just good in my opinion. Once again, another day, another Thomas movie. So I'll place this film at B tier. Now this movie was a bit unlike any other, as it was a racing movie. But instead of cars, it's trains. It was also a bit popular with the fandom when it came out. So the movie begins with Thomas taking in Clarabelle as usual. Then he goes super fast pretending he's having a race. Hence the title of the movie. Man, Annie and Clarabelle just can't catch a break. Anyway, as Thomas makes it to Vickerstown, we soon meet a new engine with two tenders, the Flying Scotsman, who also turns out to be Gordon's brother. Yes, Gordon has a brother. It is also a real engine in real life. Everybody also learns that the Great Railway Show, which is a race for steam engines, is coming up. And everybody is pressuring Sir to take at least one of them. Which kind of upsets Thomas because he really wants to go. Then the whole, streamline thing happens.
Shiny streak of racing. Go Thomas, go, go Thomas, go. All I want is a little redefined streamline.
So Thomas decides to tell Sir that maybe he could streamline someone for the race. And Sir Topham Hatt thinks that someone should be Gordon. He even tries to convince Sir that someone should be repainted, and that someone is Emily and James. I think Thomas needs to stop saying that he should get someone for this, and say that Sir should get him for this. Then a bunch of engines come off of a ship at Brenham Docks, and come for the Great Railway Show, but it turns out it's on the mainland. Thomas almost gets knocked over by one, but then she's able to couple up to him and bring him back onto the rails. This new engine is known as a Shima, and she comes all the way from Africa, or India, I don't know. Forgive me if I didn't watch the movie enough times. Even after meeting her, Thomas still doesn't take a liking to her, as she almost pushed him in the ocean. After meeting up with her for a while, Thomas is really upset as Sir won't put him to the Great Railway Show, as he wants to be changed for it. But Ashima keeps reassuring Thomas that he doesn't need to change anything, and he's great the way he is. Also,
I can't really see anything under here.
I'm full of surprises, they ought to say of me. I bring some razzle-dazzle to the yard. I'm full of surprises, as you can plainly see. I don't find being surprising all that hard.
anyway, as the Great Railway Show is coming up, everyone is changing. Gordon has been streamlined, Emily and James have been given a new coat of paint, and Thomas had an accident with one of the diesels, meaning he can't go. But as everyone else does to the mainland, Victor soon realizes that Gordon accidentally left his safety valve at the steamworks. So Thomas needs to make it to the mainland to get it to Gordon before the race. And he also needs to jump the bridge. I don't know if people love this or hate this scene. As Thomas arrives to try and give it to Gordon, it's too late as the race starts and Gordon is ignoring him.
That's not my name!
Oh, sorry, I mean the shooting star.
Streamlining!
And after Thomas came all this way, Percy feels bad and decides to let him come in the shunting challenge instead of Percy. So So Thomas goes along with it, and they continue the shunting challenge with Ashima. But Ashima's track is blocked. So Thomas puts himself at risk to lose so Ashima can win. But the judges decide, because of Thomas's bravery to protect her, they decide to also let him take the crown home as well, as two winners. And then they all decide to go back home. And we have reached the end of another Thomas film. Overall, I really like this film. It tells a great message about just being yourself and not having to change anything about you. Also, the songs were kind of great in this movie. I'll give this film an A tier. Great movie, go watch. Let me just say, most people didn't like this movie because the engine started bouncing when they were singing. Like, do you see this? That's also what got many people talking about this. One morning, Henry's taking a goods train to Vicarstown all the way to the mainland, but a signal up ahead malfunctions, and Henry crashes, meaning he can't go to the mainland now. Next thing we see is Thomas having a nice typical day, but James sees to come out and ruin it and sing about he is Sir Thomas' favorite.
Somebody has to be better than the rest. Somebody has to be so good that they're the best. Somebody has to be the favorite. Somebody has to be me. Here's James.
And throughout the rest of the day, Thomas is jealous of James's popularity and a bit mad at him for showing off as usual. And to make things worse, Thomas tries to show off to James that he'll take a goods train, but James realizes it's the goods train Henry took, and that makes him important, as he says. Which gives Thomas the idea to steal them in the morning. So he does, and he goes off to the mainland himself. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that they repainted Rosie red, like James, instead of pink, and that got a lot of people angry. Even I have a red Rosie. And now, James has to sit back and do Thomas's jobs while he's away, and Sir does not care at all. As Thomas keeps going, he soon ends up in a yard where he meets a crane known as Beresford, and won't let him pass until he knows Thomas's name.
An engine's life is free.
Thomas also meets two experimental engines, Lexi and Theo. They also give him advice on an invisible engine known as Merlin who can help him out later. And now Thomas arrives at his final destination, the steelworks, where he meets Frankie and Hurricane. They also will take his cars to Brimington goods yards, and they'll allow him to stay for the night. But as the next morning approaches, soon Frankie and Hurricane start making Thomas doing all of their work, making him extremely stressed out and worn out, making him extremely angry, so he decides to escape without Frankie and Hurricane noticing. And as Thomas travels into the woods, he starts to hear a voice, as he meets a new engine called Merlin, who is the invisible engine. Meanwhile, back on Sodor, everyone is also mad at James, as he won't go looking for Thomas, and after being pressured, he decides to go anyways, while getting taken by Frankie and Hurricane in the process. So Thomas, Lexi, Theo, and Merlin decide to set up a rescue mission to save James. That would go well as you expect. After the entire mission goes sideways, we learn the reason why Frankie and Hurricane tried to keep everyone there was because there's too much work for just two engines. So Lexi, Theo, and Merlin decide they'll actually help out with them. Then Thomas and James return home and the movie ends. Now I guess this film was sorta good. People were still angry about the bouncing, which would lead to a trend, which no one liked. But it's still a passable film. I'll place it at C tier. Big World, Big Adventures. Ho ho ho! This was surely the start of something very, very questionable. And afterwards... Now, ever since we've met Thomas, it's always been his dream to go across the world. And then he meets a race car called Ace, who's also going around the Earth, which then inspires him to accomplish his once and only dream. And once again, Thomas goes missing and everyone just needs to keep looking for him. So he travels with Ace to South Africa. But as he arrives, he loses Ace, so he tries to find him, and instead runs into Nia, his friend for the movie. And just like Ashima, he doesn't take a liking to her at all. Then as they travel throughout the rest of the country, they find Ace before a rainstorm, and Ace, being the free and easy jerk that he is, decides to have both of them race near a Great Canyon. They are derailed, but then they're put back on the tracks. And Thomas now sees Ace as the jerk he really is, and begins to miss Nia after the race, and decides to go off to the Rainbow Mountains to try and catch up with her. And as they're almost pushed down by an avalanche, Young Bao comes to the rescue out of nowhere. So after all this whole stupidness, they reconcile over the entire movie once again. They travel around the entire world as planned, and they make it back to Sodor where everyone's waiting. And with that, Thomas does it. He completed his dream about going around the world. Except Sir is still lost out at sea looking for him. Now, after this movie came out, it was complete chaos. I actually remember watching this movie with my mom and sister. But most don't like what happened after this movie because it started one of the most weirdest eras in Thomas history. Basically, it turned back to the hit era where it was really baby and stuff. I'll place this movie at D tier. And just like that, we've reached every Thomas movie, I think.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Are you really sure about that?
Yeah, I'm really sure that there's no other Thomas movies.
Oh, really? Because it seems that you may have forgotten.
My movies.
Okay, let's just get this crap over with. Bottom line is I don't even need to describe how terrible this film or the 2D reboot is. Most of the fan base and a lot of people on the internet have already done that for me. With the trains being children and bouncing off the tracks. So it's a racing movie, as the title hints, and there's a race for the Sodor Cup happening on, well, Sodor. And Thomas wants to participate in it. Also, yeah, Kana exists, I guess. Like, she's a literal screw-up throughout the entire movie, as well as this guy. Then all the engines come onto the docks to meet who's going to be participating in the race. Like, these new two characters, Riff and Jiff. Kenji came back, so that's good at least, and he's Kana's partner. Also, we got Verona and Federico. Now, there's two types of characters in a movie. There's the villain who wants to stop our hero and has an evil task. A jerk is someone who just tries to keep our hero down and doesn't really try to do anything evil. And that's who these two characters are. They're the jerk of the movie explained earlier. They're not the villains, they're just the jerks. Literally, like, so full of themselves and stuff. Thomas, the coach of the team, is trying to explain how the race works. It's like ice cream and a light bulb that needs to be taken somewhere. These deliveries don't make sense. And Kana, being the complete idiot she is throughout this movie, decides to go super fast on Cannonball Kerr. Kenji's able to save her, but his fender is broken, meaning he can't race. They all suggest Thomas to be Connor's new partner. But there's still no one to help train them for the race. What will they...
Things you might have done.
It's Hero! Yes, Hero will be their trainer, and I'm actually glad they didn't make him bounce or do anything stupid. We lost him like 1 season ago, and now we have him back. Now, this one part of the movie is really unimportant, but I just have to mention this while reviewing this, because this one scene just makes my blood boil to the core. Kana is going too fast on Cannonball Curve again, and she derails right into the ground. But somehow, she is still in perfect condition to enter the competition. But Kenji did the same thing to save her, and now his fender is broken. How are you able to fall from probably thousands of feet in the air and still land perfectly in perfect condition to enter? It doesn't make sense! Realism is lost in this movie. Anyway, back to the point. So the race begins, and they're all taking sailboats. And there's a bunch of things that are coming in Thomas and Kana's way. So their friends try to warn them about what's up ahead. They also need to carry some ice cream. Anyway, Verona and Federico come off the rails after going too fast, doing Kana's mistake. So after that whole fiasco, they make it to the end of the race and win. They get the cup and they take one last wrap around the course. And yeah, that is the whole piece of crap this movie is. I can't even describe what the backlash of this movie was. So many people were angry at this, and not just so many people, but parents and children didn't like this new redesign of Thomas either. To make matters worse, Mattel thought it was a good idea to have this movie be released in theaters.
You serious?
I kid you not, this film came out in the movies. It does not make sense for this film to be anywhere. It is just complete bullcrap. F tier. Another All Engines Go movie! Yay! One thing I have to say is thank God this did not release in theaters like the last one did. It is also pretty much the last movie. So in this film, when Thomas and Percy go looking for one of Percy's cars for Farmer McCool, they cannot find them and assume it's been eaten by a mine monster. Then they go off to tell the rest of their friends about it. Then With, yes, With, of all engines, comes out and tell them the mystery of Lookout Mountain and why it was abandoned. So all of them decide to go off to look for Percy's cars and uncover the mystery. They also split up, by the way. Great, now they can all die like a horror movie and this show can be over. There's really nothing in this movie to really talk about. They're all just acting like idiots going around these caves. They're just exploring it for an entire hour and nothing interesting happens. Also, Mattel thought it was a good idea to have all the engines just go Scooby-Doo at like 38 minutes of the movie.
No, this way. No, that way. No, this way. That way. I'm telling you, it's this way. That way. That way. It's this way. No, this way.
Who's controlling this turntable? Then they find Percy's ghost scaring machine, and then they get chased by what they're assuming is the mine monster. But as they leave the caves, they finds out that it's just a mine digger, and it was Darcy this whole time. Then the fat controller just rewards them with this Big Adventure Club flag for finding out the mystery of Lookout Mountain? What is this? They didn't even do anything. They were just running around a cave like idiots for an entire hour. What mystery did they uncover? A mine digger doing her job? This movie just does not make any more sense. Everybody is just acting completely whack. I have literally nothing else to say because this movie is just bonkers. Final ranking, F tier, get wrecked. It's finally over. All of the pain and suffering I had to sit through is officially done, and we have gone through every single Thomas and Friends movie. Thomas, while having some terrible movies, can still balance it up with one of his good movies. As for the ranking, here is the finished tier list. In order, we have The Great Discovery, an incredible Thomas movie with a rap song at the end. The Magic Railroad, Thomas's first movie, which kind of felt good to a lot of people, but still felt bad to most people. The Adventure Begins, a great movie that retells Thomas's origins. King of the Railway, a big block of lore for Thomas and Friends. The Great Race, okay movie with great message in it. Tale of the Brave, a great Halloween special. Calling All Engines, okay movie for its time. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, great movie with pirate theme in it. Journey Beyond Sodor, okay movie, but started a bouncing trend. Day of the Diesels, I like how they made Percy the main character in this one. Blue Mountain Mystery, even more lore for Thomas. Hero of the Rails, a bit boring but introduced a character that everybody can love. Big World, Big Adventures, a bit mid and also started a really weird and babyish time for Thomas. Misty Island Rescue, a very boring Thomas movie that uses things over and over again. Race for the Sodor Cup, why did this come out in theaters? The Mystery of Lookout Mountain, basically a race for Sodor Cup, but everyone is much dumber. You know, when I first thought about this project, I was really interested. Now that it's over, I'm very happy, 1, and 2, I don't have to suffer anymore with this. Rewatching every single Thomas movie is kind of reminding me why I still love Thomas the Tank Engine. Cause let me just say, when Thomas was made, it wasn't just for kids. And sure, it's a kid's show, but it wasn't literally just for children. It was made for literally anyone who was willing to look at it. That's why it has such a huge cult following. Like The Unlucky Tug, Runnery's 10, TTTE Guy, and so much more people. And if you're wondering if they're going to make another Thomas movie, actually they are, with Mark Forster directing. It will also be live action and CGI. Really hope this doesn't get canceled like The Adventures of Thomas or The Institute of Innovation. But those two are for another video. I guess I did have fun while making this. So yeah, thanks for watching, subscribe for more funny content, and I'll see you later. And moral of the story,